Hi, everybody. Welcome back to just my camera there. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to WYDAF Live, where we help you wise up at work and deal with all the stuff that challenges you daily at work and giving you skills and perspective from some wonderful guests. And this week I'm thrilled because Sourabh Gupta is back. And you may remember that Sourabh is a multi-disciplinary artist based in Brooklyn. His work has graced the shop windows of places like Bergdorf Goodman. He's working on a project for Hudson Yards right now. And his work was just a couple of weeks ago featured on the red carpet at the Met Gala. So without further ado, let me welcome back Sourabh Gupta. Sourabh, are you here? There you are.
Hey, Alan, and good morning, everybody. Whoever is
Hey,
live with us.
how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's good to be back.
Oh, your space looks so beautiful and
Thank
and
you.
tidy. It's almost like a painting itself. Is it real, Sourabh?
Yes, it is real, and it is as tidy as it is right now for the last many
Yeah.
days. Yeah.
So how you been? Because you've had a big couple of weeks. I know that your work was on the red carpet at the Met Gala just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that was fun. I had just stopped working for a few days when that red carpet thing happened, so I could sit back and enjoy a little bit of that. And I'm back in
Yeah.
full swing at the studio again, so it just is like a day of that, joy, and then you move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us about it. Let's talk about it. Tell us all about what that was, who it was for. We've got some pictures we can show everyone. So you dressed Ivy Getty from I guess, the head up, right? You did a piece for her.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So Oscar De La Renta's team, the creative directors at Oscar De La Renta, Fernando and uh, Laura Kim, amazing people. So they got me to think of a piece for Ivy Getty for the red carpet, and I had not made that connection since her name was Ivy. That's why we were doing the Ivy as a headpiece. But
Okay.
that connection occurred to me on the day of gala when everybody was talking about her name. Regardless, so we did that piece especially for her, and I think she graced it very beautifully. And I'm kind of like very happy and proud of the
Wow.
work we did together. Yeah.
Wow. Look at
So
that.
this is
So
made out of paper, which was also a pattern that was on the dress. The dress was made from a fabric, which, if I remember correctly, a fabric that belonged to her grandmother, and she was very close to the grandmother. I think it was from the Frick Museum in New York, the fabric.
yeah.
So, I mean, the family has a whole history of, heirlooms and fabrics and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes, the Getty family is quite
Yes.
well known. Yes. Hang on a minute. We're going to look at your mug in a minute because I think you've done something there, my
I
friend.
have. There was supposed to be your mug was supposed to arrive, which did not. So I had to make my own.
Now that is
Do you read
Jugaad.
that?
We can see that.
Yes.
Let's just show everybody that. Hold on a second. There you go.
This is wisdom you did not ask for. This is not the mug I was sent. This is a mug that I made at my own studio. It's the one that was supposed to come did not arrive.
That's Jugaad, a clever fix, Sourabh. You've got your mug for the show. I love it.
Yes, thank
That
you.
is so
Thank
you.
you.
That
Yeah,
is
it's
so
just
you.
marker
All
on
right.
a regular mug.
Well, maybe we can have your mug made as like a special edition or something. And
Yes, yes. And all the
okay, so
royalty comes
back
to
to
the
the real
studio.
work, back to the real
Okay.
stuff. Let's talk about this. So just tell us about how this came together. What the process was like for you,
Yeah.
and just how it came to look so beautiful and work so beautifully as it obviously did.
So there is something I think which I am also not aware of, even if I am the part of the industry. There's a lot of things that you don't know while this is happening. It's also for the reasons that they want to protect the glamour and all of that. So I knew that we were doing some very special piece, and just as if anything that I'm doing, I wanted to give my best. But in this case, I think the team that I was working with at Oscar De La Renta was also extremely helpful. Like, they could share with me as much as they could, and I tried to interpreted that, with the best of my abilities at the studio. So they had an embroidery that they wanted to replicate, continuing into a headpiece. So I just did a few experiments with different materials and trying to interpret the original sample that I was given. So what you see is paper and wire, and we did a bunch of fittings, and there was fortunately not many alterations required in this case, and it was got made and sent. And the next thing I know is that it's at the red carpet, and I was also surprised the way it looked. Yeah.
And were you happy with the way it looked?
Yeah, I think as an artist, there is always that piece of dissatisfaction in anything you do. And I think that's not even because of the piece, that's the person itself, the artist himself or
Yeah.
herself. And because we actually have to have that resentment of a certain kind to move on and prove that in the next piece, I guess. So we almost
Hmm.
use that as a mechanism to fuel ourselves. So just with anything that I do, I think, once it is over, I am grateful for that and I move on to the next thing. It's always
Well,
like,
it
the
looks
next project is
absolutely
going to be.
beautiful.
Yeah. And I think, she did a fantastic job. I'm not saying that because this is what everybody says. I think it's a different thing, when you're making it on a mannequin that has no expressions and then you see a real person walking with it and, it's a part of their entire look for the evening. It's very special. I mean, I think sometimes I forget that how special it is, and I just already move on to the next thing. But when somebody like you would bring it back, and I think that, oh, it is something. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're so fueled by your creativity to want to create the next thing, and you're just kind of like moving on. But it is important to stop and smell
Yeah,
the
and
roses or the ivy.
exactly, exactly. And I think I do that. There's always that balance, right? How much what you've done is you, and how much that is coming ahead of you is also you. So it's
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, and then fortunately, Vogue and Architecture Digest had also covered this piece amongst the other looks, and they had their own interpretations of the story. How the look for Ivy Getty was also amongst one of the 8 looks that mm, at the Met Gala that were inspired by the buildings in New York. So this was
hmm,
inspired by the Frick Museum in certain cases. I think because there's an Ivy graveyard there, which belongs
yeah,
to or which was sponsored by the Getty family. So there's a whole lot of
yeah,
connection, and it's nice.
yeah.
I think this is where collaborations are way more fantastic than working on your own. So
Hmm.
that aspect of this work is something that I think I take back with me. Is like the collaboration and
Yeah.
working with other amazing people in the industry.
And so you work. My dog's driving me crazy today. So we're having a live and direct uh, doggy drama. Everybody, go on.
Yes.
Um, so what is that like for you collaborating with other artists? Because I know that primarily you work alone, but I know that you also want to build a team. So talk about that, because I know you are very much an inspiring leader as well, which is why one of the reasons why I'm so fascinated by you and everything you do. So talk to me a little bit about that.
So I think my work is actually my way of connecting with people. It's very important for me to work so that I can actually connect with other people, and I use my work as a means to do that by either inviting somebody to look at the work or doing work for people. So I think there's not much fascinating about me. So my work is one thing that I think allows me to build that bridge with other people, and that was very clear to me even ever as a child. There is a part of me that expresses, but why do we express? We express to get a reaction and collaborate. We do that daily. When I'm talking to
Yeah.
you, I'm expressing myself to then build that conversation with your reaction on top of that. So that is also what I'm going to do when I'm going to start building a team. I don't need people just as a pair of hands, but what I need is a team that is has its own spirit, and we come together and become a more stronger team. I need a collaboration of people in that team. So when I
Yeah.
work with other artists, I think there are it's also a very intuitive and instinctive thing. You can tell with somebody that you're going to be able to express yourself while they are also able to express theirs. And then there are other teams where they're all working as slaves for you, and it's everything that you're doing is yours. I'm not very inspired by that model at this stage in my life. So I'm more interested in bringing people where I think I'm growing through making this work, and they are growing in their own forms at that stage where they need my help and I need theirs. It's like a real synergy in that case.
Right. So you really want to be a part of their journey as much as they're a part of
Yeah,
yours.
I think because work is the source of fulfillment, right? It's not just a task. It's also, if I do this more than 15 hours a day, it's not a chore for me. It's also as important as actually expressing and living my life through it. So we need other people in our little worlds to make it more meaningful. I mean, I've done my work
Yeah.
my entire life on my own, but I also have simultaneously collaborated with other people, either as just plain spectators or critics, or somebody as a friend who has come and helped. But now I think I'm at a place where I want to actively bring in other people in my work, where it's also an exchange of ideas. But then if I have the stronger voice in that, it will be that. But if somebody else has another better opinion, let that be also a voice that is heard. But then we'll see where the
Hmm.
collaboration directs itself towards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's great because I know you're about to start building your team. You're working on a big project right now
Yeah.
for Hudson Yards. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. Also, I mean, I've been operating my studio for the last 2 years on my own, and I've done, I think, enough. But now, also because I want to expand and grow, so, and this project actually does need, me having six hands at the same time. So in this case,
Yeah.
it will be also a great experience for somebody coming in to actually do something, a practical project. It's a different thing when you go to school and you're doing a project and everything is a hypothetical. But when you go to a real site and you have real constraints, you can almost get more creative, and you also are more responsible for your decisions, because the repercussions could be very real in this case. So in a way, that pressure almost forces you to be more creative and hold yourself more accountable. So I think it's a much fast track way of learning, when something has a real
Hmm.
deadline, when something has a real, dimension. And
Yeah.
so I am already on it, but I think this is the right time for me to bring in other people to build that team. Because also, when they say you want a relationship with somebody, you test it on the travels, how well you travel together, how well you understand each other. So this is going to be that opportunity for me to find where, how much do I know about myself, and how much I think I can find out about the other person, to find that space where we both have a healthy collaboration in between.
So, is that part of why you create? Are you learning? Are you trying to discover yourself as you create? Is that part of what this is about
Oh,
for you?
absolutely. I mean, that is, something that I don't know if I have a clear vocabulary for that yet. I am extremely, extremely introspective almost the entire part of my day. So maybe by being by myself, and also since the work, so there is no other voice in the studio right now. So when I am making something, I am the judge, I am the critic, I am the creative, I am also the person who is bringing the idea up. So in a way, I have to be all those characters at the same time to then have a product that I'm confident about. So it's also many times you'll see that in my journey, what I'm doing today was not what was doing 2 years ago. If you have done something for so long that you have almost learned the craft, in my case, the craft has evolved, sometimes even entirely shifted from the original point. So I think, am I making that point clear enough, that in that the discovery is as much the part of my art, and that is
Right.
what also allows me to make something that I'm confident about and I'm proud of.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And one of the things that you said and that you and I have talked about before extensively, just one on one, is your introspection, your level of introspection,
Yeah.
and how you are constantly looking at how you're thinking, how that's affecting your work, um, and the impact of your thoughts, and maybe even why you're thinking the way you are or feeling the way you are. Do you find that that is a part of your creative process? Is it a byproduct product of it? Is it a help? Is it a hindrance? Like, how does that affect you in your creation? Because I think, a lot of us can get stuck, right, in moments when we're challenged or overwhelmed. And I'm particularly interested in your perspective on that as a creative person with deadlines. It's now a business. It's not, you're not just creating things, you're actually in business with
Yes.
clients and deadlines. So I'm
Right.
curious about that and how that works for you, because I know that you are very introspective and that can be a blessing and a curse for a lot of us.
Yeah, I think it's like you asked a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Help me, steer if I'm going left and right in
Yeah.
this case. But I'll start with something that I definitely know. It is that, how a superpower is actually the same miracle that could be both, a magic and boon for you at the same time. It's true with everything. It's like if you are really blessed with something, a little overdose of that is a danger. It's with, salt, it's with sugar, anything in your life in general. And I personally think I have a brain that processes information endlessly at a speed that I have to sometimes don't even have control over. So that also, I think, what makes me extremely creative, at least in my own little world. But if I also don't know how to manage it well, it doesn't translate very well when I'm working with other people. So I'm almost forced to be introspective because as a person, I think I want to believe that I am actually a nice person inside. So sometimes my work can also project that I'm overtly perfectionist and I'm overtly cynical, and that is not really who I am. That's a tool that I use to create and refine my work, but it can also be interpreted like, I'm very, like I could project an image that is not really who I am. So that almost allows me to constantly watch myself as a third person as well, to see how I am performing, and that is also, I think, what we're referring to as introspection. But
Hmm.
also, I think that was there within myself even as a child, because I grew up in a conservative family, and even if I had freedom to do everything, but it still was like, expected to be within a certain confine, and I had to manage myself since then to see what is too far. So whatever was too far, I processed that within my head. So that is where I was using my techniques of discovery and self-development, understanding myself. And when I could not understand why I'm doing what, but I'm feeling something different, I used that introspection as a tool to start understanding myself. And then ever since, I've read books after books on human behavior, psychology, brain development, because I personally needed those tools for myself. And now I think I'm at a place where I feel that is such a basis of a good productive life. And especially if you want to live at a level where you're constantly performing, and I want to perform at a higher Olympic level. So it can't
Hmm.
just be creativity. In that case, it's going to be more than creativity. It's going to be skill management, creativity management, your own idea of understanding yourself. You have to have a deep understanding of your own behavior, because nobody is born perfect, nobody is naturally perfect. So we almost try to suppress one thing over the other because the product we are trying to achieve needs that side of us to come out more than the other side. So I think that's basically what I'm doing, like anybody else. Does that make sense, actually?
It makes so much sense. And I guess what I'm really hearing you talk about there is your own emotional intelligence and emotional agility, right?
Yeah, I think also I was sensitive as a child. I mean, I understood a lot more than I wanted to. Like, you just go into a room and you feel a number of emotions and things, and it's not a button within yourself that you can regulate, higher or lower. Some people just have it at a different tuning. And I think for me, the challenge was in my life to use it for helping myself rather than getting stuck. Because if you are in a room and you're
Mm.
absorbing all the clues, sometimes my brain remembers useless information for years. I mean, I have a very strong memory. And we were just laughing at a dinner yesterday because we were talking about something, and I was telling this person a little event that happened in his life 4 years ago, which is of no significance to anybody, but is of for me because I remember it. So that happens to me all the time. It's like I would remember every little thing. So now in that moment, I had a chance to understand, you know, just because I remember it, is this even useful? So that is where a
Yeah,
little management skill comes in again.
like filtering things out. But I
Yeah.
guess, do you find yourself looking at your own emotions and saying, is this helpful to me? Or do I need to give
I think
myself time and space in order to feel something different, in order to be, more productive, for instance? I'm just wondering about that that emotional
yeah.
regulation for you.
Now, I'll say that I don't think I've arrived at one specific answer at this stage in my life, but what I have tested different ideas. Sometimes there is that urge to be honest as well, to produce honest work. So I want to feel what I feel instead of trying to edit it. I do want to
Hmm.
see it the way my brain and my emotions see it. So there is that part that I want to still maintain, while also trying to put other layers on it. Is like, is this actually productive to feel this deep, to feel this strongly? And so,
Hmm.
but that might not happen all at the same time. Maybe I'll catch myself at a certain pattern. Is like, okay, that is how I naturally feel and that is what I understand, but now where do I go with it? Is this something
Yeah,
that I can translate into a productive thing, or can I translate into a gold of emotion? Like, can I store it as a memory, emotion memory, so that I know when I feel that what clue it has. So I think that is
yeah,
also me watching myself almost entirely, and then using that as almost like radio waves as emotional information to create the work. And this is no different from epiphany and revelation, because when I am producing a creative idea, it's not that I go out and I buy that idea. I'm just filtering and tuning that idea which is already there. It's just that it has that certain congruence of emotion, timing, event, or the question or the curiosity. So sometimes that just produces that bubble, which is an idea.
yeah.
So it's I think it's a very fragile laboratory in a brain in that case.
Fragile laboratory. I like that. Yeah, and your work is so, I guess, rooted in the idea of Jugaad, right? In sort of creating things where
Yes.
you don't have it, you make it.
Yeah.
And
I think
so
it
if
is.
you live in the world like that, you must see endless possibility around you
Yeah,
for
and I think
creation.
sometimes it's also an attempt to keep it silly, to keep it a little bit
Hmm.
funny. Otherwise, I
Hmm.
think it could also be almost very serious. I do have an intensity of a certain kind, and know that that's my strength to use it. But if I don't channel it or I don't spend it in these funny, silly things, it could not be very useful for, I think, people around me.
Hmm.
So it's like, this is why I don't take it serious. If I don't have it, let's try to make it. Why not?
Yeah. So one of the things that you have said, which think is fascinating, and I'd love you to talk about this a little bit if you would. You said that I created because of
Give me 1 second.
scarcity.
I hear something. Is there something playing in the back?
There's an
Yes.
echo.
So
Do we need to? You're right. Can you hear me?
yeah, but I'm hearing have is such an integral part of my practice.
Oh,
I'm very appreciative of that.
oh, it's your computer. We are live,
Give me 1 second,
people.
please.
And while we're having technical issues, I'm going to just re-plug myself in because apparently I'm out of power and I
Okay,
don't
I think
want to lose you.
that worked
So,
fine. Just 1 second, I'm coming back.
yeah.
Okay, here
This
I
is
am.
fun, isn't
Does
it?
that work?
This is how everybody knows that it's a live thing, right? When
Does
everything
it
just,
work?
you know. Yeah, we can hear you
And
fine.
okay, perfect. I'm back in
Can
the
you hear
screen.
me?
Do you see me?
Yeah, we can see you. We can hear you. Can you
Perfect.
hear us?
Amazing. Yes, absolutely.
Great. So you created out of scarcity and now you create out of abundance. So, like, can you just talk about that? Because that must have been, well, I don't want to assume what it must have been. You tell us. What was that
So I
like going from scarcity to abundance? That must be
I
such an
think
interesting thing.
if you have already not that mentioned, let me make that clear, right? The response to extreme situations, I found the answer was almost in a similar approach. Since there was a scarcity, a perceived scarcity of resources in the part of India that I grew up, the answer was to be more creative in finding ways to do it with alternate materials. But here,
Hmm.
when I come, the answer is that there is so much of abundance of materials. How do you then use that to create something that is still meaningful, right? So
Hmm.
in that, when there was nothing, you try to create meaning out of that. When there's everything and even beyond, you try to create meaning of what is left and what is, uh, what is excess in that. So that is what I mean when I say, created from scarcity and creating from abundance in that case. So Jugaad is also what helps me to connect in between those two things.
Hmm.
Was that your question actually?
Yeah, it was just, I just can't imagine creating, being in a world where you're creating because of scarcity and you're really having to find all the pieces to make what you want, and then being in a world of abundance
Yeah,
where everything you could possibly want is available to you, and just the
yeah,
polarity of that, given
yeah,
that you grew up in an
yeah.
environment creating out of scarcity to suddenly be in abundance. I just was very curious about that because it must be quite overwhelming.
It was, but I think since it wasn't like, that I was thrusted into that immediately, that the response was reflexive. It rather was actually, you know, I had the choice to pace into it because when I was at Parsons, I, even though the materials and the supplies are in abundance, but I still had limited means at the time. So I, in that case, used whatever was excess, whatever was left by the other students. So I was still using the similar principle, but with a range of different materials now. So I could almost go beyond my practice. So that is what I did. It was
So
almost like
you
a
would,
decision. It was almost a decision for the entire first years. Like, I'm just going to create with whatever is spared by the other students at that school at Parsons, because there was a section in the studio where people will leave what they don't need and what they don't want. Even if they cut a little piece of it, a mount sheet, they would leave the rest of it because they probably did not know want to use it or did not know what to do with the leftover. But I knew that that is what I want to use, and that's the real goal for me.
wow. I'm just
Yeah.
imagining, I'm just imagining trying to watch something like, or watching something like Project Runway. Okay, we've all seen
Yeah,
Project Runway. I know,
unconventional
right?
materials, unconventional. So it was an
So,
unconventional material for the entire duration of my life there. It
but
has
I'm just
been
thinking about
even.
it. This is a competition. Everybody's using materials, and then they just have leftovers, and then you just go in and win the competition using their scraps. That's basically
Yeah,
what you would do, sir.
but see, Alan, I think that is probably my gift. Also, I think, there is that respect and attachment to the materials as well. It's not just that I'm like, some very woke person who wants to recycle and sustain all of that. That's an aspect of my practice. But it is also the capacity to, when you have very few things, I think the tendency to understand and build a relationship with those few materials is very much, almost, I think, inevitable. And when you have excess, you almost see everything as a transaction or as a dispensable. And it doesn't really serve us as human beings because you don't even try to get to know yourself because you think you can just go and buy a new thing for yourself. And when you have a very few limited options, it almost forces you to go within and connect with that because you want those reasons to justify that. So if we have a slipper when I say India, India is very broad. Okay, so whenever I say India, I'm referring to that part of the India that I grew up, which is
Hmm.
Jammu and Kashmir. It's just still a small place. It's not very developed, for good reasons, I hope. So when you have a slipper that you're wearing and a flip flop, so you don't just throw it away once the strap is withered or whatever we call it. In our case, you go to a cobbler and he puts another little piece of leather to strengthen that, And sometimes that's ultimately you will see the whole flip flop is covered with pieces of patches of leather, and it's fun. And I think you connect with something, and there's other things you can focus on. You don't have to now just go and buy another piece and buy the next one for economic reasons, and also for, I think, the respect for a simple world around us. Somehow I think
Mhm.
that's one a blessing of living in a smaller place, that you almost have a respect for everything around you to an extent.
And it's such a lost art, isn't it? The art of repairing
Repairing,
things,
yes.
mending things, fixing
Yeah.
things. Um,
Fortunately, I grew
it's
up in a house like that. I mean, they were all doing that all the time. Not, I don't know if it was economically purely, but it was for some reason my grandmother always had a needle and a thread, patching up clothes,
yeah,
all that.
yeah. I mean, mine too. It's a generational thing, right? I mean, certainly, my grandparents didn't waste a thing. Everything was, fixed and and mended. Or you used every part of the the chicken when you were cooking. I mean, there was nothing really went to waste. There are generations that sort of taught us those
Yeah,
things, and those things have been lost over over the years with consumerism and just mass production and just the availability of everything, and our mindset has shifted.
yeah, and I don't know it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't think we have arrived at a place in the world. It seems like maybe not a very helpful thing right now, because we have proven a living model with things that are special and do not create other problems in the world. Like now we have to figure out what to do with our landfills. So it's like a constant, you know, attitude of human beings to create problems and then solve those problems and then create more problems to solve those problems. And I think maybe that's what the nature of the living is, and we just have to accept it. We just
Yeah.
are people narrating those stories in between those little chunks, like coming as historians and talking, warning the future generation, and then the new generation comes, they look at as history, and then they are producing their own models. So I think we just have to get okay with it. Of course climate change and everything is real, but we also must understand how much of that is also nature finding its own course, and we can probably be more tuned with that, or observe it and
Yeah.
find out where we are committing errors. So I think we do that in a little way in our studio every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there a message in your work that is consistent, that you're trying to communicate?
See, I would like to think there is, but I'm also a person who believes, we grow tremendously. And, the message almost can't be consistent in that respect. So I'm not very married to those ideas for now at this stage in my life or career. But I think something that is inevitable in me as a person is like, make the best of every little thing you have. If it's a needle, find 200 ways to use it than just going and buying another one. But be curious. I mean, still be open to new ideas. I don't think that. And there are certain people who are like that, and we have people who are very married to a single idea, and we need both of us in the same room. So I think what I'm doing is not necessarily for everybody. What they are doing is not necessarily for everybody else. So we're all playing our games at the best
Mhm.
version. Something that I think we can all probably be considerate of is to have that intention and check that intention with a few data points around us, that is it actually contributing to the world in a way that we think will benefit in a bigger picture. So I do that when I'm choosing the materials, when I'm choosing the scale, when I'm choosing my audience, and when I'm choosing the places to show my work. It's like I am committed to an idea of being a person who gets joy out of contribution. So when my work isn't doing that, I don't find much meaning in that work. You know, I might do that at the
Right.
backstage to inquire and explore, but when I want to present it, it should inevitably make your life in one bit more joyful, better, easier, comfortable, all of those aspects. So that is the idea of message in my work.
I love that. And I'm curious, does that philosophy and that need translate into other aspects of your life, such as your relationships or kind of building your team, for instance? I'm just wondering if that's a
Absolutely,
sensibility that threads
Alan. I
through.
think um, you know. I'm sorry, I just jumped in because there's a lag and I didn't know if the question was over. And so,
It's okay.
yeah, so I think I think of myself as a person who's sincere. I might not do everything right, but I will start with an intention that was placed right. I think I wouldn't move without much intention with much of the stuff that I do, be it the people that I deal with, be it the people that I bring into my studio, be it the people that I want to hire and work with. So that is a very, I mean, my own living is for a reason, right? I mean, I was hugely inspired by what I heard from Oprah, not because of her message. It's like there is a connection of personality that it was so compelling for me. And one of the reasons I am in the United States is for Oprah and Nate Berkus. When I listened to those people as a conversation, I thought this was my tribe. So if you know Oprah's work and her philosophy, I think mine is not very different from that worldview. Does that make
And
sense?
so tell us, yeah, absolutely. So tell us about the Nate Berkus Oprah connection and sort of why that was so inspiring for you. Because I am interested, and I think other people are interested in what
Okay, so I
inspires
think
you and where do you get that from?
so there is a little aspect of cynical me and the world that I grew up in the architecture school. When you, I went for an architecture degree for 5 years, and I extended it to 6 years because I was, of course, more sincere and serious than other students. You know, so uh, I think I was, we were almost. I, as a person, I'm extremely curious. So things make sense to me at the size of a button and the size of an airplane. They're not two very different things for me. They both have a similar philosophy in life. And so when I went to an architecture school, there was something that I learned unconsciously was that interior design is not a profession. It's, some bunch of housewives trying to make the world more glamorous. That was somehow fed to, not in a direct way, but that was what the idea was given to you in different ways. And I had almost subscribed to that philosophy myself. So even though
Hmm.
I thought I'd be very good at, the little detail part of the in architecture design job, which is interior design, and I had somehow felt that conflict within myself. I want to do that, but I don't think it's a legitimate profession. It's not a real thing. So, it's 2015 and the earthquake in Nepal has hit. So I had a good reason to stop my degree at that point and say, I want to go to Nepal. I want to, like see if I could be of any help amongst other things. And I was working with international organizations, CARE and Red Cross, and a few other organizations that were working together. And I was working with them as an artist and an architect to produce drawings for people in Nepal to build safely again. So while I was doing that, there was a time in my day when would be building bags out of leather scraps, leftover scraps by other people, just to make for myself and for friends. I would have my iPad with somebody talking on that, and that day it was Oprah and Nate, and they were talking about Nate's journey of interior design as a profession, and I thought this person is amazing in the way he's telling his story, and then I realized he's also an interior designer. So there was that question within myself: this profession is very real. I mean, these people are making a difference in the world, even if that difference might not be perceived like that. So that almost gave me permission to think that I could be a good interior designer if I wanted to. And Oprah, I just got more and more deeper into her dealing with the world and her philosophy, and I saw I mean, I was always that person within myself. I just got
Hmm.
validation that there is somebody who is has a stage living the same philosophy. So then I started applying for looking for, like, okay, if I want to be closer to these people. So then, I started, okay, applying for schools for interior design, and then I got scholarship to come to Parsons to study interior design. So that's a shorter version of that story, but that's
Hmm.
what happened. And the next thing I know, I have a client who is friends with Neil Burkus. So when I was reading Neil Burkus's book, the third chapter is extremely dedicated to my first client. So that's how the
Oh,
world works as well. So I was almost one degree away from him coming to the United States within the last 3 years. I've already been in the same room with him without intending to be. But just saying that, that little conversation had an impact on me, and it almost changed the trajectory as well in that way.
that's great. So you got to meet him, talk to him.
I did not talk to him, but I was standing next to him. I thought I a lot has changed within myself as well since then, right? So I'm grateful for that journey, but I also don't want to just blurt something out. I think it should be more intentional. And when we
Yeah.
have room and space for that, that would be, because we were at an event together at that client's birthday. So I
Ah,
thought,
good.
it just was not as meaningful to talk. And I think it's a beautiful story for myself, and I want to do justice when I tell him a part of that.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's great. Well,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
he'll see this and he'll reach out to you. Um, you're also very influenced and inspired by Thomas Heatherwick, right? You and I have talked about Thomas Heatherwick a lot. And do you want to just
Absolutely,
say a little bit
absolutely.
about that?
Yeah, so look, I think there is a need for specification in the world, and I think somewhat more in the west side of the world. Like if you're in India, the Western world is more concerned about being specific at one craft and one art, and I think that approach might not be very helpful for everybody in the world, because some people are idea makers, some people are precisionists, so we have to distinguish between those people. Somehow we find it more easier to paddle an idea for the benefit of a larger cause, and ignoring the subtleties of that. I was definitely not that product who could be very specific and one, because of also the nature of my brain, not because I did not want to. I ascribed to that idea for a long time, and it only created more and more conflict and rendered me more unproductive. So when I came
Mm,
across Thomas Heatherwick's work, because he was designing the red bus in London, designing it to an extreme precision, but the next thing he's doing is a planter, and the other thing he's doing is a building in Manhattan, and then the vessel, and then the little island park in the water. So you see how these projects are not seemingly very connected to one another, but the philosophy in the process is very similar. And just when I found that validation through somebody else, I found home within myself, and that ease of looking at the world with different lenses. The world is not a simple molecule, it's a complex molecule with variations in hundreds of expressions, and we don't expect ourselves to be only committed to one molecule of that. I personally thought that if you have information and space to perceive more, do that. That is your talent. And in my case, that is definitely my talent, to connect disparate, disconnected ideas and find ways
right.
to express them. So I met him very briefly at a building in New York, where I was also helping in very little part of that building. So I told him very briefly how I'm inspired. He was like, come work with me in London. I said, I'm not ready to move to London yet. But so I have read his books, articles, everything cover to cover. And the more I read about it, the more I see myself in that person. And I will say he was courageous enough to talk about those things, as like he doesn't like to call himself as an architect or an artist or a designer. He's like a master craftsman. So I think
Hmm.
that distinction is also very important, because it's actually frowned upon, means that you don't know what you're doing, but he's the one who's produced these many things that people are using.
Yeah. This is so great. Yeah, he really is a master craftsman, as you said, and I think that's how I think of you, a maker.
Yeah.
You're a maker of things, and
Yeah,
it's
I mean, making is very important to me, but so is the conceiving of the idea. The idea comes first, making comes sometimes simultaneously in the third part. But people somehow don't think that was okay. At Parsons, at least, there was certain conversations where was I was made to feel that this is not I'm not doing it right.
wow. I mean,
Yeah,
that's disappointing to hear, but it's great to hear that you got the, whether it was permission or inspiration, whatever the word might be, to actually embrace all aspects of yourself and know that's okay, because it sounds like that was a little bit of a struggle for you in the beginning, kind of figuring out.
I think throughout my life, Alan, I think we will do another conversation about, from the outside, I do try to make it look normal, but there is a journey that goes on within yourself, and you are born as a fish, and then you're trying to walk as an elephant, right? While I might be so good at swimming waters and at the speed that nobody else might, but because I have to walk like an elephant, I am constantly challenged. So we're not serving people and the world around us by trying to do that. So
Yeah.
sometimes, it's also takes you time to realize I am fish and I'm very happy about it.
Well, we're very, very, very happy that you are a fish, Saurabh. So, is there a guiding? We're almost out of time, so I just want to
Yeah.
give you the final word, I guess. So, is there a guiding philosophy for you for your future? Is there something that you're sort of holding on to as a thought or an idea that sort of guides your work?
So many things, but something that comes to me right now is that as cliched as it is, it might still be cliched to even myself, but what is more helpful in our daily life is that even if it's the wrong thing you're doing, but if you really want to do that, I think give it a try. Failing at something that you believed in, it would suck when you fail. It would never feel that good because you know that you wasted time, you wasted resources. But if there is any little bit of conviction and you are stuck, do that thing and you will see the second thing you're doing might not look very connected to that thing, but it will have opened that door for you to take yourself a little bit less seriously. And of course, there is a consequence of failing in some cases, right? You have a client, but you have to understand there is a voice within you. If you're not comfortable with that, it's going to create a number of other conflicts within yourself. That is your journey to be more honest. You want to be successful, but if you're not ready to fail in that way and you only want to do the right thing every time, you might succeed at that, but there are many chances that you won't succeed in that way. So make
Mhm.
it easier to fail right now today so that tomorrow when even bigger project comes, you know what failing feels like and what are the setbacks you can have by not doing that. So that's what I do,
Right.
and it makes things a little bit easier. Even if I have a very important client, I give myself that room. It's like, I'm going to definitely try it. It might not be the right thing, it might not be the ultimate thing, but I know that somehow it's going to create something as a butterfly effect in the third step or the fifth step that I'm going to do. So that also helps you be more confident in your own self. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the good work comes from, at least in the world around me.
I love that. It's like I haven't failed, I just haven't succeeded yet. And there's always some learning from it to take
Yeah,
forward, right, into the
there
next
are
thing.
times it's hard to find that balance, but I think when you do understand that, it's going to make it easier.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, I do that with you when I ask you those questions sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We should take one of our other conversations another day. But
Yes,
we're
yes.
out of time. We're out of time again. It's always so great to talk to you, Saurabh. Thank you for joining
Perfect.
us. Everyone, you can follow Sourabh at Sourabh underscore Gupta underscore
Underscore
design
design.
on Instagram, just to see
Instagram.
his beautiful work. You
Thank you.
can find him here,
Yes.
and obviously you can connect with him there as well. I know he's
Yes.
going to be back next season. Thank you for your wonderful insights, Sourabh, and for sharing your
Thank you,
journey
Alan.
with
It's
us. It's
always a pleasure talking about work and the world around it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And we are out of time. And thank you for joining us. You can follow us online on just hashtag WYDAF. You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Of course, we're on Instagram as well. And yeah, and thanks to all the comments. We didn't get a chance to come to the comments, but Stacy and Vinny and Pat, hi, and thanks for chiming in. We'll get back to you on all of that. But we're going to take a break next week for Memorial Day. So have a great Memorial Day weekend. And then we'll be back the following week with the one and only John Edelman. So we'll see you then.